with Brian Koscak of Equity Crowdfunding and also with Cassels. Brian, welcome to One-on-One on Crowdfunding with the Crowdfund Beat. Welcome.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, I know you're busy, and we wanted to get you between all these conferences that you go. Tell us where you are today.
Well, Sydney, today I'm in British Columbia, the Equity Crowdfunding Alliance of Canada, which I have the privilege of being co-chair along with Oscar Joffrey. We are doing a number of conferences across Canada. 2 days ago we were in Calgary. About a month ago we were in Toronto. Today we're in Vancouver. We are talking about equity crowdfunding. As a panelist said yesterday, this is about owners, not donors.
I should say that we are doing this broadcast for our Canadian version of the Crowdfund Beat, and and you're one of the leader in the crowdfunding movement in Canada, and you guys have a great proposed aggressive law. What's going on with that? And all these great conferences that you guys doing around the country.
Well, thanks, Sydney. You're doing a lot of great stuff at Crowdfund Beat, which we are following up here in Canada as well. Content's content. This is an international movement with how to raise capital online. So thank you very much for your interviews, your publications, etc. It is an important resource, and these interviews with many different people to understand what is happening in the ecosystem. In Canada, what is happening is the world is changing here. We are moving in a more graduated ecosystem that has a proposal for a startup equity crowdfunding exemption. That's going to allow people to raise up to $300,000. That means companies within a calendar year, and investors to put in $1,500. After that, we have something that looks like the Jobs Act in terms of the equity crowdfunding framework, which Ontario and Quebec and 4 other provinces are looking at. That's interesting. That's going to allow investors to invest up to $2,500 investment or $10,000 in a calendar year, and companies to $1.5 million. So it's a bit different than the Jobs Act in terms issuers can raise more money, but it is lesser than the Jobs Act in that investors are tapped out at a flat $2,500. When you move forward, and what's exciting about here in British Columbia is they have under existing prospectus exemptions, which is called an offering, and if you have a prescribed form, that means there are certain requirements of what you have to have in it, and you have a risk acknowledgement form which you give to an investor, you can sell that to the crowd. And if you do that online through an exempt market dealer, that is called crowdfunding. So British Columbia has been saying they've had this for quite a number of years, and this was repeated by the regulator today at the earlier part of our conference. So in terms of equity crowdfunding in Canada, yes, you can do it. Yes, it's legal. You can do it online through an exempt market dealer to not only accredited investors, but to the public under this offering memorandum exemption. Sydney, I'll leave you with, it would be equivalent in the U.S. if you had what was called a private placement memorandum exemption. It'd be something like that. I know that does not exist, but that is what exists here today in all provinces across Canada except Ontario proposal.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great, Brian. You guys doing these conferences to let everybody know in Canada about the equity crowdfunding, and we should say that you're advocate of the equity crowdfunding and the real crowdfunding, as everybody calls it. You guys with the financial world. Who comes to this conference? I mean, I know Canada have 13 provinces, and so all these regulators. So right now you're in this conference, and which is grateful you come out, and you've been co-chairing with Oscar Joffrey, which is doing a great job also, Oscar, in Canada. And who comes to this conference? Are they curious, or the people want to get into business? Who comes to these panels, basically?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that there is a capital raising crisis. You're getting issuers out there, people involved in the ecosystem. There is a funding crisis. They're trying to come out to see what is this all about? How does this raise more capital, get different asset class investments for investors? That's what this is about. So it's about issuers, investors, the curious, professionals, others. It's an exciting time because we're looking at what's happening in the U.S. under the Jobs Act. We're now seeing Congressman McHenry come out with Jobs 2.0. We find that curious. We're reading things that is jobs stalled or not. We are looking forward to the U.S. implement its structure. because the regulators here, I've met with many of them, they are looking at the U.S. job structure and seeing how it works. So attendees are varied. The regulator was here today talking about online investing and how it works. So we do have basically a varied group, but all interested and excited and curious and trying to figure out how does this work. And if I may add, we earlier in Toronto had the pleasure of having Chris Terrell from Offerboard come up, and he gave a wonderful presentation about what's happening in the U.S. and also about Offerboard and its exciting platform, which recently launched as well.
So you guys, when is this proposed rule is supposed to be in Ontario? I know you're in Toronto lawyer, and when is the proposal? When is the deadline? What is everybody? Did you already pass? So what's next in Canada?
The deadline for the comment period is June 18th. So going to these types of forums, we're encouraging people to learn and basically ask questions. So the BC Securities Commission was out. They are looking only at the startup exemption. They believe that crowdfunding is best addressed under the offering memorandum exemption, so they are not looking at the proposal that Ontario has put out there, and Quebec and New Brunswick and a few other provinces. There's 6 of them in that one. In terms of the startup one, Sydney, there's only 5 provinces. It's interesting, I best demonstrate this by showing a map of Canada, and I illustrate that the credit investor exemption is right across the board. And when you look at the startup exemption, the crowdfunding one is in 5 jurisdictions, with BC looking at it, and I understand Alberta's also looking at it. So you have to envision that in Canada here we have 10 provinces, 3 territories. They all have skin in the game. They're all trying to strike the right balance, and it's basically discussion. If you will, we don't have basically homogenous. We don't have a National Securities Commission. It's more or less like Europe, or it's as if each state had a view and what's happening here. So it's very much consensus building, educating, and trying to strike the right balance that works for us here in Canada, Sydney.
So far they're embracing it. I mean, I know they're talking to you. That was in Canada, actually, in Montreal, and talking to everybody in the crowd world, the crowdfunding. They're kind of the angel investors, VC investors. They kind of see this as a financial, so they're cooperating in Canada, more of the cooperation.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had some significant individuals here that are in the angel and the VC space, and I know the angels are looking at this, and I think at one time Vancouver was quite a popular place for capital raising, and in light of the integration of the stock exchanges, they're finding that no longer exists. So they're trying to figure out, how do we promote capital formation? There's a lot of mining and minerals and resources and oil and gas here, and that part of the public markets needs to be stimulated. So there is a lot of curiosity of, how does this work with the public markets? How is it going to stimulate capital formation and create jobs in British Columbia? So they're out, they're curious, they don't necessarily understand it all, but that's all part of the process, is for us to share, talk, and figure out how this ecosystem between the public markets and the private markets work together, because it's a symbiotic relationship. If one's not functioning well, then you hope that, say, the privates pick up, or vice versa. And that's what this is about. How does the bigger ecosystem all fit together?
Well, Brian, thank you very much for great work you do advocating crowdfunding, and I know you're one of the believers actually there, and as you said, it's nothing new, it's PPM. Tell me, if this organization, Equity Crowdfunding of Canada, if somebody wants to know more about it, I know, by the way, we have your graphic, and you did a great job on that infographic, and your articles in Crowdfunding Canada, they can search it over there. We appreciate all these great articles you write, and you're giving us this common knowledge, and we can go and find it, what's going on. But how are they going to find out, if somebody wants to know about the Equity Crowdfunding in Canada, how are they going to find this organization?
Well, it's the Equity Crowdfunding Alliance of Canada. If you Google that, we have a website where we have a lot of information there posted. I actually have been privileged to work with someone from the Nova Scotia Securities Commission, and I just published a book on Amazon.com. It's a bit more technical, but it's called Equity Crowdfunding in Canada, and it lays out the comparison of the different regimes, whether it's startup or equity crowdfunding, but it also threw in there the Jobs Act. And I had the pleasure of having Chris Tyrell from Offerboard and I believe the chair of CIFRA take a peek at the U.S. part to make sure that it was correct. So you then have a nice comparison of all the two. So if you go to my website at www.briankoscak, briankoscak.com, I have the book there linked to Amazon. I have different articles there. And I'm very thankful, Sydney, for you sharing those articles. And I read a lot of the different authors that you have on your wonderful site. And it's the sharing of information, this new ecosystem, whether it's through videos or podcasts. That's what makes this exciting. I must share this with you because I've said it once. I've said it a lot of times on the road here. I'm going to give credit to Chris Tyrell. He said when you really look at this, it's when you merge basically securities law and basically technology. This is like two strangers meeting each other for the first time, having that awkward hug. And they're going to get to know each other better, technology and securities law. And what we're finding here is that people are talking more and asking questions of how does the social media aspect work, how does the securities law work, and it's exciting when I speak to people like Chris and others in the U.S. and you, and watch the videos and read the articles. We have that common bond that we're all trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to get it right.
Brian, thank you very much, and have a great conference. Thanks for taking your time off, and I know you're busy and traveling everywhere. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we see all these things, all the great work you guys, and crowdfunding, it will happen in Canada, and so we appreciate that.
Great, Sydney, thank you, and thank you for all the hard work and also for your conferences, which is outstanding content. It's great networking opportunities and lots of fun. So I know you're doing some other events coming up, and I encourage people to dial into your website and find out about them because they are great sources of information, networking opportunities, and allows everyone to get connected as we move together as a group.
Thank you, Brian. Have a wonderful conference.
Thank you.
And for audience at home, this is Sydney Armani along with Brian Koscak of Castle Rock in saying so long. Thanks for watching.